Right, Baracus. Where to start on this one? Firstly, I guess we could say this is an all-new board for Shinn. And not only just an all-new board, but an all-new discipline, really, big air. The ADHD was championed by the big air riders from the Shinn family of old. But this thing, unlike the ADHD, which was a wake-style board, this thing is purebred for big air. And I have to say, it does it brilliantly. It does it in a way that I've not seen done before. Why? Well, big air takes a lot of power, and high power loadings exist in an environment that is, by definition, sketchy, unpredictable, and knife edge, really. You know, you're dealing with a lot of ifs and buts and rolls of dice. This thing tames all that. It is supremely composed when you push things to levels at which you think you're pushing your luck. It's easy to ride at these power levels, which I think is its key. It doesn't upskittle you, it glosses over a lot of imperfections that would normally see you throttling back. The grip level is extraordinary, and there is one specific thing that I'll come back to in a minute that increases that even further, and it's not really been seen in the industry. To my knowledge, I've never heard of it seen in the industry before, so that is a first, and it makes a massive difference when you start to get serious. But such is the composure of this thing and the grip of it at the top levels, it was 3 sessions before I even thought about trying to use this new adjustment. It is an extraordinary bit of kit. When it was given to me, Shinn said, try this. He said, and if you don't like it, you're wrong. And he was right. I absolutely loved it. The first run, I knew it was right. Why? Because all the boards I'd tried up until then, you could feel them start to get slippery and skittlish when you start pushing. This immediately just hunkered down and felt locked. It felt calm. The weight distribution between both feet, even. And that is a massive plus for big air, because if you're dealing with those kind of power levels, you know, hour after hour, you can't be overloading one leg over the other. Doesn't matter how fit and strong you are, you're eventually going to come unstuck. And I fail to believe that all of these big air riders are doing sessions that last more than about 45 minutes. This thing is real world. You could ride this thing in high power conditions for a couple of hours for a mortal, and you know, as long as you're not going too crazy, perfectly sustainable at that kind of loading. The board itself is actually quite thick. It's the thickest board in the range by quite a long way. And though it does use a carbon laminate, it's clearly heavier than the Monka and the Dalton. Does that matter? Well, when you're dealing with that kind of power loading, it doesn't matter one jot. If anything, it actually calms it down. Such is the rail thickness that they're using a chamfer or a bevel on the rail this year. And again, when you are absolutely nailing it on the rail, that brings a level of stability that the other boards don't have. It might rob you of a bit of efficiency, but who cares when it's, you know, 30 knots and you've got more power than you can shake a stick at. It aids what the board does brilliantly, and it's unique to this model and unique to Shinn as well as a range. The stiffness of the board, well, it actually feels fairly soft and compliant in rough chop, but that's not to take away from the fact that it's actually quite stiff when you get hold of it physically. It deals with heavy impacts and rough conditions surprisingly well, but that level of stiffness needs to be there, because if you're coming in hot and you land it flat, you're going to try and bend the tips down, and you can't have that on a big airboard, because if these fins catch or you catch too much rail at the front when you land, you're going straight over the handlebars, and yeah, it's just not a nice place to be. So it's specifically engineered to survive intense and quite frankly violent landings. Again, it just brings confidence. Now, size-wise, 136x40, oddly, in big air, everybody's riding the same boards. It doesn't matter whether you're 100 kilos or whether you're 60 kilos, you're taking a lot of power. You have more power than you know what to do with. What you do with that power is the problem, not whether or not you can get going. I would never in my wildest dreams ride 136x40. It to me is a board size so small, grossly impractical. It would bring nothing to my top end control over what a 41 wide or a 42 wide board would, but it's going to cost me massively in upwind performance and early planing. This thing breaks those rules. 136x40, okay, if the wind drops and I ride offshore locations a lot, it's still got enough efficiency to be able to get me home. So that's that box ticked. When the wind does come online and you do have the juice, this thing has the ability to deal with that power far more than anything 41 or 42 could ever hope to do. And so in that, I'm urging you, if you're looking at this board, look at this size, 136x40. Don't look at the other ones unless you have a specific reason that you need to do so. This is the size for big air riding. Now you can also put bindings on this thing and use it as a wake style board, just like we used pads and straps on the old wake style ADHD and used that for big air. So it is cross compatible, but its design and its speciality is big air. I mentioned before that this has a party piece, and that is the moving of the fin positions. For the first time, we've had fin positions that are not static. And by that I mean that you can undo the heel side rail fin bolts and you can angle the fin further towards the rail of the board, which you'll see in this shot here. And that has a massive effect on how the board handles. First of all, it does compromise the efficiency of the board slightly, but we're talking a tiny amount. And when you get to this point, it makes not one iota of difference to the practicality of the board in any way. What it does do is bury the heel side rail in a way that makes the board feel completely different to the rider. If I said it added an extra 5 knots of top end wind range onto the board, I would be being grossly conservative. It is like another gear. It's like you want to overtake something on the motorway and you change down a gear. This is like changing down 2. It absolutely transforms the board. Now, one of our riders, Grant, he's been riding with Shinn now for a few years. His Woo record was, I think, at about 21, 22. He was getting into the 20s, but not often. And when he got the Baracus, immediately he went to 28. And he'd been riding through a whole winter with the same equipment. Soon as the Baracus turned up, boom, there it was, new personal best on Woo. Now, it sounds like a cheap marketing trick to say that that performance is just down to this board, but I'm not joking, it really is. This is one of those shifts in recreational big air riding where this is rewriting the rules for what it is as the average kiteboarding rider in the discipline of big air. And not only that, the composure that this board brings to the genre is such that instead of pushing your luck and rolling the dice, it rolls back the chances of something going wrong a long way. So you're riding inside your comfort zone far more than you were before. And that is a very important thing to get across, because these multidiscipline athletes that we have in the industry now, a lot of them say that big air kiteboarding, as amazing, addictive and wondrous as it is by far the most sketchy discipline that they partake in. And I'm sure you'd agree with me, there is some truth in that. And we may take it for granted, but we are rolling the dice out there when we're dicking around with big air. And this thing goes a long way to taming that. You don't have to take it to the nth degree, but what's immediately apparent from the first run is that where you were before is a lot less risky to where you are now, and in that there is real value. So there you have it, the Baracus. Now, for all you crazy fools out there who just love hooning around in conditions that you ought not to be, this is a game changer. And its medium wind, medium power appeal may not be anywhere near as high as the other boards. In fact, you really need power to make this sing. But it is the one board that I have in the van, which if I turn up to the beach and it is Baracus weather, you know it. And if you don't have it in the van, it is a serious disadvantage. In fact, once you've had a taste, you just can't go back. It is a fantastic board if you're only riding big air, but if you are a kiteboarder who rides in all conditions, then you should be looking Monka or you should be looking Dalton. The Baracus should be in there in the quiver as the board you wheel out when you turn up at the beach and everything's losing its mind. In those conditions, there is nothing to touch it. If you're buying the Baracus as a one-only board, sure, it does do practical fine and well. You know, you can get around, you can have a good laugh on it. It's certainly not difficult to ride in medium power conditions, but it's duller than the other boards and it doesn't have the magic until the power really winds up. When it does, nothing else can touch it. It is unique. So that's the Baracus. It is all new in every way, and if you go near high power riding and it is a thing that you love, you've got to get a go on one of these because it really does change the rules.